Welcome to Hormone Health for Real Life. We're Jenna and Jen, and we are so glad you're here.
If you've been searching for answers, looking for hope, or wondering why your body isn't responding the way it used to, you're in the right place. We believe our bodies are designed to heal.
Remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not replace professional medical advice.
Now let's dive in to today's episode.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. It's Jen here with you today, and I am so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something that affects millions of women, but often gets completely missed. I know this was the missing puzzle piece in my health journey over the last many years. That is high cortisol. When most people hear the word cortisol, they immediately think of stress, and they say things like, but I don't feel that stressed. And while that's technically true that it does deal with stress, it doesn't tell the whole story. That's the problem. Most women, like me, don't walk in saying, I think my cortisol is high. What can I do about that? We say things like, I'm so exhausted all the time. Why can't I lose weight when I'm doing everything right? My sleep is terrible. Or something like, I have been feeling anxiety for no reason. I'm craving sugar constantly. My hormones are just a mess and I don't feel like myself anymore. What I finally pulled together to fill in that missing puzzle piece for myself is that all of these seemingly unrelated symptoms point back to the root issue, which is that my nervous system was just not feeling safe. Now, what is our nervous system? Our nervous system is our body's communication network. It's constantly sending messages between our brain and every organ, muscle, hormone, and cell in our body. When it feels safe, our body can heal, digest, sleep, and balance our hormones. But when it feels threatened, it shifts into survival mode, and many of those healing functions are put on hold. This goes back to what I like to call our caveman ancestors. They had to live with heightened awareness all the time because there were dangers all around them. There might have been a tiger chasing them. And when that happens and you're running for your life, your body's not worried about digesting food anymore. It's not worried about producing the hormones so that you can procreate and have children. It's worried about getting you safe in that exact moment. The problem in our world today is, while we don't have tigers chasing us, thank goodness for that, we have things in our world that our body thinks is a tiger chasing us. We have a deadline at work, and so we get stressed and stressed and stressed as that deadline comes closer as we work so hard to meet that deadline. Or our child is going off to school for the first time, and we're really feeling nervous about how that's going to go for them. And sometimes even harder things like job loss or grief or taking care of an ailing parent. There are so many things in our world that cause us stress, but instead of looking at it and understanding what's happening, our body takes it as a tiger is chasing me. We need to be on high alert and stop all of those systems in the body and let's run away from tiger. When our nervous system is working properly, we can go into fight or flight. Our adrenaline can rise, and then it will come back down and we'll be calm and go along with our life. But what happens is a lot of us stay in that state of fight or flight all the time, day after day, week after week, year after year, and don't even realize it. I recognize now that that has been my problem. Cortisol isn't actually part of the nervous system. It's a hormone that's made by our adrenal glands, but our nervous system tells our body when and how much cortisol to produce. So what's happening in our body is our brain senses some kind of a stressor, and then our autonomic nervous system activates. Our hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland, the pituitary signals the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands release cortisol. So that was a lot of science words. But whilst cortisol and the nervous system are different, they're tightly connected. If the nervous system stays in a constant state of threat, cortisol tends to stay elevated and become dysregulated. And over time, the irregular cortisol patterns make the nervous system more reactive, causing a cycle that's hard to break. Today, I want to help you understand what high cortisol actually feels like in women. So if this is a missing piece in your health journey, you will recognize it. We will talk about how we get to that state, why it develops that way, and then what our body may be trying to tell us through these symptoms and what we can start to do about it. The problem isn't stress. It's easy to blame it on stress. The problem is actually our body going into survival mode. One of my biggest misconceptions in the beginning, once cortisol came on my radar, was thinking that cortisol was the enemy. Cortisol is not the enemy. It's actually one of our body's most important protective hormones. It's there to wake us up in the morning. It's there to help regulate our blood sugars. It's there to help us respond to challenges and, honestly, at the end of the day, to keep us alive. The problem happens when our body starts believing that every day is an emergency. And that's the part that I didn't realize for a long time. My body wasn't just responding to emotional stress. It was responding to stressors, things like poor sleep, blood sugar crashes, inflammation, chronic pain, relationship stress, financial stress, perimenopause, too much screen time, too little sunlight, lack of rest, and then even years of always putting everyone's needs before my own. Do you recognize yourself in this list? I definitely recognize myself in a lot of the things on that list. When we are stressing our body out with those stressors, eventually our nervous system begins operating as if it is in danger all the time. Our cortisol stays elevated far longer than it was ever designed to. I've asked myself, was I born this way? Because honestly, those of you who know me know I'm a little bit of a type A perfectionist, maybe control freak type of a personality. I look back at my life and I wonder if I ever wasn't stressing my body out. But while my personality wasn't going to cause my nervous system to be overactive, it definitely didn't help. And I've learned to take a step back and chill out a little more. What does high cortisol actually feel like? It feels like we're tired all day long, and then when we get into bed at night, we can't sleep. That, I think, is a symptom that we hear more often than not, and it is one that I struggled with for so many years. I'm exhausted all day long, and I cannot wait to get into bed. But then when I finally get into bed and lay down, my brain turns on. Suddenly, I'm thinking about everything that happened today and everything I need to do tomorrow. I'm replaying all of those conversations in my head and thinking that I should have said things differently. And then I'm thinking about what I should have said differently 10 years ago, not just today. And my brain won't shut off. And then because my brain won't shut off, I usually roll over, grab my phone, and start researching random things in the middle of the night. Why is this happening to us? In many cases, it's because our cortisol rhythm has been flipped. And that's what I realized had happened to me. Instead of my cortisol rising in the morning to wake my body up and get me out of bed, my cortisol cycle was completely flipped. The ideal situation is that our cortisol starts to rise early in the morning, telling our body it's time to get up. Let's start waking up the body. Let's get ready to start the day. Then, as we go throughout our day, our cortisol declines. So by bedtime, we have wound down, melatonin has kicked in, and we're ready to sleep. What was happening to me was my cortisol was kicking in at midnight, then keeping me up all night. We're going to talk about some solutions as we get closer to the end. Another symptom that we hear women say is that they go to sleep okay, but then they wake up between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning and can't go back to sleep. They think it's just insomnia. What they're realizing is that their cortisol was just surging way too early. As their blood sugar drops off during the night, their body interprets that drop as danger, and then cortisol rises to rescue the blood sugar, and then suddenly here they are, awake in the middle of the night. This is not because your body hates you. It's because your body's trying to protect you. I have to keep reminding myself of that. Balancing our blood sugar is one of the solutions to help that stop happening. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Another symptom, and this one was a big one for me, was just feeling anxious all the time, even when life is fine. I have never really been one to have anxiety or feel anxious. All of a sudden, I would start having anxiety attacks over nothing. It was very weird. Nothing was really wrong. My life was good. So why am I feeling anxious all the time? I was asking myself. It's because anxiety isn't always created by our circumstances. It's created by our physiology. When our cortisol stays high, and our nervous system stays on alert, our brain begins scanning for the threats. And then our body feels unsafe, even when we are sitting safely in our own living room. The problem is we can't think our way out of a biological stress response. We have to signal to our body that it is safe, and we have to convince our body to feel safe again. Another symptom is that we crave sugar, salt, and carbs all the time. This was also a big one for me. Sometimes I couldn't stop shoving food in my mouth. I would get so upset with myself, saying that I just need more discipline. Why is this happening to me? Why can't I control myself? But it really boils down to biology. When our body is running on stress hormones, it's seeking quick sources of energy. Well, the problem is that sugar spikes our blood sugar, which then crashes our blood sugar, And then the crash triggers more cortisol, which then it needs more sources of energy. So we crave sugar and the cycle just keeps going on and on and on. Once we recognize what's happening in our bodies, we can calm those cravings by doing very specific things throughout the day. Another symptom is that our body feels inflamed. This is something that we don't really talk about enough, but something that I have experienced. Joint pain, body aches, headaches, migraines, digestive issues, skin problems, and autoimmune flare-ups more often than should be happening. In the beginning, cortisol will suppress inflammation. That's part of its job. But when cortisol stays elevated for so long, our body really becomes less responsive to its effects. And as a result, our body feels increasingly inflamed and reactive. I remember waking up and feeling like I had been hit by a truck morning after morning after morning after morning, and not knowing what was going on. And it was cortisol. Another symptom is you feel like you've lost yourself. I think this is the most heartbreaking symptom that I experienced. I started to not feel joy anymore. I didn't have motivation. I didn't feel resilient anymore. I felt like I just dropped into a place of apathy where I was just trudging through, getting through, and everything felt so much harder than it used to. And I didn't know why. This is because our symptoms develop slowly. So over time, we haven't recognized the shift and we just think this is who we are now. This is who I am as a mom who's homeschooling and raising 6 kids. And this is just what my life is supposed to look like. But that's not right. We can be our beautiful, amazing, vibrant selves again. We just need to get our body working right. Now let's talk about what we can do about it. Now we know what this missing puzzle piece is. What can we do to put it in place and help our body feel right again? Step number 1 is to start looking for safety and not stress. But we don't want to just start asking ourselves, how do I eliminate all the stress in my life? Because that's not possible. What we need to start asking ourselves is, how can I help my body feel safe? That's a completely different question. We can still continue to live life, but use the tools to help our body know that it is safe. Things that signal safety to our body are protein-rich meals, because that helps our blood sugar not go up and down so drastically. Eating consistently. This is one where I got myself into trouble. I started intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting does amazing things for our bodies, and I was totally on board for that. What I didn't realize was that depriving my body of food was making my body feel like we were starving and unsafe. That sent me into a tailspin and I crashed really hard. There is a time and a place for intermittent fasting, absolutely, in our health journeys. It's just not when we're trying to get our nervous system and our cortisol dysregulation under control. If any of these symptoms have sounded familiar to you, it's not the time for intermittent fasting. Get your nervous system under control, and then there will be a place for intermittent fasting. And I look forward to the time in the future that I can intermittent fast again, because I know it was doing such great things for my body. That's just not now. Now I have to work on keeping my blood sugar level and eating consistently throughout the day. Another thing that signals our body is safe is getting morning sunlight. That's something that will absolutely help with insomnia and resetting that cortisol cycle. My cortisol was completely backwards. It's because I was living inside with artificial light all the time. I wasn't giving those signals to my body from the sun that, hey, it's morning. And my body got completely out of rhythm. Once I started going outside and seeing the sky get light first thing in the morning, my cortisol cycle shifted back to where it should be. It was amazing how I started sleeping. Another tool that we have is deep breathing. I can't say enough about deep breathing. We can take those deep breaths in through our nose and out through our nose and slow down our breathing when we feel ourselves breathing quickly. For a more in-depth conversation, go back to the episode on Recharge with the Basics, because one of the basics is deep breathing. Specifically for cortisol and nervous system regulation, we want an extra long exhale and even to hum while we are exhaling. That vibration of the hum signals to our brain safety. So give that a try next time you're feeling stress. Another thing that will help calm our cortisol is another hormone called oxytocin. We can get more oxytocin in our life through meaningful connections with others, through hugs and physical touch and conversations with our friends and time spent with family. All those cozy, fun relationship things that we do, they all help increase our oxytocin, which then puts our cortisol back in its place. Another thing we can do is to rest when we need to rest. That was a hard one for me. life is demanding and time is demanding. I remember there being phases of my life where I didn't even have time to go to the bathroom. I had to schedule those times in. You can probably relate. Telling myself that it was okay to rest was really hard for me, but it wasn't until I started taking the time to rest that everything started to shift. And I'm not saying go take a 3-hour nap in the middle of the afternoon. I'm just saying recognize when your body is getting agitated and wound up and go and just sit down. Take some deep breaths, calm your mind, close your eyes. Even for just 5 minutes, that will make a huge difference. Give yourself that permission to rest. And then adequate sleep is so important. And I know you're telling me I can't sleep. How am I supposed to get adequate sleep when I can't sleep? But do what you need to do to get that sleep. I know that there are things I could do better before I go to bed, like staying off my phone, dimming the lights in the house, staying off of my computer. So blocking the blue light, dimming the lights, and signaling to my brain that we're slowing down and it's time to get ready to sleep. Look at your bedtime routine. And are there things you can shift that will help with that process? Because I bet you'll realize that there are. There are also some physical poses that we can put our body in that will signal safety. One of those is laying on the floor with our legs up a wall. So we're making an L shape with our body. Our legs are up the wall, our body's laying flat on the ground, and laying there for 5 to 10 minutes. Something about having our legs elevated above our heart calms our system down. It is amazing how much more calm you'll feel after laying that way. Another one is a yoga pose called child's pose. I wish I could show you a picture. Just Google it and you'll see some pictures and you'll know what I'm talking about. Another physical thing to do is put some pressure on the tragus in your ear. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it and you'll see a picture. Putting pressure on that tragus and just holding tight to it for about 30 seconds on both sides will calm you down. Anytime I'm out in public and need to calm down, I can do my deep breathing and I can put that pressure on the tragus in my ear and do it very inconspicuously, where I can't really lay down and put my legs up the wall at the doctor's office or in the grocery store. Once our nervous system feels safe, it allows those body systems to start moving and functioning again. Our hormones get back on track, our digestion gets back on track, our sleep gets back on track, and all of those things come back into alignment. Step number 2 in getting our nervous system back under control is to stabilize our blood sugar. I alluded to this a little bit in the last step, but let's really dive in. This is one of the fastest ways to reduce unnecessary cortisol production. It's as simple as eating protein at breakfast, don't skip meals, and then build all of your meals around protein, healthy fats, and fiber. I tend to have a sweet tooth, and so I have been disrupting my blood sugar significantly over the years because I like to eat sweets, and that has been a hard thing that I have been weaning myself off of. But it's so much easier when I have had protein and fiber-rich meals to avoid the sugar and the sweets because my body is satiated. That was one of the things I was shocked by, how much my anxiety, my sleep, and my energy all improved when I could get my blood sugar stable. That also means eating probably every 3 to 4 hours. Make sure you get that afternoon snack. And then if your sleep is still struggling, have another snack at about 9 o'clock, right before bed, to keep your blood sugar steadier throughout the night. We want higher protein, healthy fats, and fiber in those snacks and meals. Step number 3 is for us to stop treating those symptoms like they're separate problems. This is probably the most important thing I'm going to share today, that the cravings, the fatigue, the sleep struggles, the anxiety, the hormone symptoms, and the inflammation are likely not 6 separate problems. They're just 6 separate messages pointing back to the same underlying imbalance, which is high cortisol and a dysregulated nervous system. So when we start addressing the root cause, getting our cortisol under control, managing our nervous system, making our body feel safe, so many of these symptoms start to go away altogether. We don't need a Band-Aid for each of these separate symptoms. We can do these simple nervous system reset things that will address them all. If this episode has hit a chord with you, you are likely in the same boat with me with nervous system dysregulation, and I have got some great things to share. I have one sheet that's a cortisol reset food guide that has 5 foods that we could eat in the morning and 5 foods that we could eat in the evening that will help calm our cortisol naturally. These foods help support blood sugar balance, they nourish our nervous system, and they create healthier cortisol rhythms all throughout the day. You can grab that from the link in the show notes. Another one that I have for you is called the 7 Physical Ways to Reset Your Nervous System. So along with putting pressure on the tragus and doing child's pose and legs of the wall, there's several other things physically that you can do that will signal safety to your body. So let's recap. Today we talked about cortisol is a survival mode problem, but the goal isn't eliminating cortisol. We need it to live. The goal is helping our body feel safe enough to stop overproducing it. Blood sugar and our cortisol are deeply connected. When our blood sugar is unstable, cortisol rises to compensate for that. So many of the symptoms that we are experiencing, like the fatigue and the cravings and the sleep issues, the anxiety, the inflammation, all of the hormone struggles, they're often related to our nervous system. So if you've been feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, inflamed, anxious, and just disconnected from who you know you really are, I hope that this episode has given you something important back. Some knowledge, some education, some tools to work with, because your body's not working against you. It's working for you. And every symptom is just communication from our body of what it needs in support from us. Once we can stop fighting our bodies and start listening to them, healing absolutely becomes possible. Thanks so much for being here today. Please like and subscribe and come back next week for another great podcast.